So the pathogenesis of Africa's problems right now are basically Africa trying to recuperate from what happened post-colonialism, because essentially what happened and how the colonial masters were able to have a grip on so many of these African states was by divide and conquer. Well, I'm going to do a comparative between an ideal state, or one that has been ideal for a long time at least. Look at the United States of America and how it looks like. So the United States of America, the individual states have very many different nuances, but they've been able to coalesce into the United States. That means that they are beholden to their states and their practices to some extent. Laws in Alabama will not be the same in Kentucky or Texas and that kind of thing, and that is fine. There are, for example, prohibition on abortion, for example, is different from Florida than, say, California and that kind of thing. Those are all things you see on the news. But ultimately, under federal law, they are beholden to one constitution, one president, one rule of law. We think in regards to maintaining a balance, you're able to get that, because essentially these are states that are able to service a lot of what is proximate to them and a lot of what has defined their coalescing in some geographical way, but also they can get utility through galvanizing these states into being beholden into one state. You know, Obama said in his speech, we are not enemies but friends, and though passion may have strained, it must not break our bonds of affection. He actually echoed these words that were from Lincoln that have always consistently echoed the ethos of the United States, that in a lot of our differences, because of our size and our cultural nuances, we can essentially be able to unite and be one great state. And evidently, for the past 8 years, the United States has been the dominant country in the world. So because of that, I'm going to be going to my argument. So to the first argument, I'm just going to show you the initial goal of forming the OAU, because a lot of these people or these guys might largely come and argue that there are regional blocks that exist. For example, we have the EU, we have the AU, we have all of these things that will happen, but to a great extent we don't think that that is something that serves Africa to the greatest extent for a few reasons. One, we tell you that, like I told you in my framing, like if the white man could not conquer these people, they had to balkanize them. And because of the post-colonial ethos, or whatever was happening at that time, it was easy to do this because African countries were unwilling to give up their sovereignty and they were fresh from colonialism. To that extent, we think if you are going to try and divide them, it will be very unlikely. So it was very easy to incentivize people to kill a lot of their people. Look at what happened with Thomas Sankara and Traore and these kinds of people. And people tried to rise up and stand for what their country would have wanted. It was just divide and conquer. We don't think that would have been different to a great degree. And so the initial goal of the AU was to have a united African state. So that was the initial goal of somebody like Kwame Nkrumah, who was the founding father. However, the West did not want this to happen. I'll take you in about a minute. So because of that, comparatively, look at an ideal situation like the States, for example. So beyond the need to be different but similar at the same time, to the extent where it gives you the most utility, they were able to do a lot of galvanization with many states, and they were able to conquer holistically, because what happened, they began spreading from the east to the west, and by the time they were done, they were this very powerful entity. And by that means, we wouldn't say they've been able to conquer other territories externally, but they've had soft power, they've had the standing in the world to enable these kinds of things, and we think that is particularly very important. Yeah, I'll take your PI.
So you couldn't unite at the point of post-colonialism when everyone was getting independence at the same time. Why would it work now?
Yeah, like I told you in my case, it was very simple. After colonialism, a lot of these states were already so oppressed from colonialism, and essentially the incentive for them to give up the tiny bit of sovereignty that they had smelled was essentially not going to happen. They would rather stay that way and maintain that, and that essentially risk losing it in and of themselves. We think that is very, very important. Now I'm going to engage with you on some of the things that these guys might try and bring. So firstly, I said they'll talk about maybe defending regional blocks and how they probably serve utility to a great extent. In the end, we tell you that we've proved a few things. One, we've proved that uniting Africa will essentially solve the problem that has been formed to a great extent, one that was brought by balkanization and essentially a need to divide these people if you are not able to conquer them. And they will only be solved by uniting Africa, and they have to defend otherwise to a great extent to win the debate. With that, I rest our case. Thank you.